It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Sorry about that. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Actually, Mark Miller, I'm going to give it to you, bud. Joshua Hamilton is the person that got it first, but Josh won last week. So we're going to hold off on sending Josh another beanie. But Mark Miller, you actually are close enough that I'm going to give it to you. So the movie that I was playing in the very beginning was actually heavy metal. And Mark Miller, that's what you guessed. So, yeah, I'll give that to you. Yeah, it's a movie that I never should have been able to watch at like 6 years old because it's totally inappropriate. No 6-year-old should be watching heavy metal for sure. Yeah, I was able to watch a lot of stuff that I shouldn't have been watching. So, Mark Miller, make sure you let me know whether you want a cuffed or non-cuffed beanie. For those that don't understand what's going on, in the chat in the very beginning, I said when I start the stream that I was going to be playing a movie in the background, and I was playing the heavy metal movie, and the person to guess it won. And Joshua Hamilton won last week, so I'm not going to give him the prize again. But Mark Miller, you were the second person to email me. So, Mark, let me know if you want a cuffed or non-cuffed. So this is the cuff right here, right? So this one keeps you warmer. The non-cuffed is just the beanie without the fold over, basically. So let me know which beanie you want, Mark Miller, and then send me your address to the same email you already sent it to, and I'll get it sent out for you. Okay, bud? Yeah, congrats, Mark. I like doing that kind of stuff. I like doing different stuff. You know, I'm a different kind of a guy when it comes to giveaways and things like that. I don't like to announce things. I don't like to drive people to, you know, do certain things to win and all that good stuff. But yeah, no, I like doing the fun, different style giveaways. That's just my style of doing things. Yeah, and I'm not going to give too many hints away, but yeah, there's a really big thing coming. Really, really big for those that have been watching the channel for a long time. Something really big coming towards the end of the year here, probably actually before the end of the year here in the next couple weeks. a really, really cool video is going to be announced. And that's all that I'm going to say. I'm not going to tell you guys anything else because, again, I like to do things differently. I like to not follow the same routines that everybody does that does live streams and different stuff like that. I like to beat to the tune of my own drum. So, yeah, right on. Well, hopefully you guys are all doing well. Got a nice little list of things to talk about here, and then I definitely want to get to your guys' questions and topics. So if you guys have things you want me to cover, things you want me to talk about, please make sure you put them into the live stream chat and type it in caps lock. That way it helps me to see them and or the moderators to see them, and I'll try to get to your questions. If I fail to answer your question or don't see it because a lot of the times there's a lot of stuff going on inside the chat, feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com and I'll definitely try to get back with you. Okay, so let me see what we got going on in here. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure I'll get demonetized or whatever, but I don't make any money on these live streams anyways, so it's all good. Don't make a difference. Don't make a difference. I'm sure YouTube will copyright me or something. So I don't know. I don't know what the fair use is. I'm just showing something in the background playing. So it wasn't like necessarily on my screen. It was just in the background. So we'll see. See what happens in there. All right. I'm looking at the chat right now. Okay, so I'm going to get to my list of stuff to talk about, okay? So had a couple videos this last week, 2 of them to be exact. The first one was a walk-in freezer with a defrost issue. That was a really cool one because it was a little bit different. It was an iced up freezer. You know, that happens a lot where I get iced up freezers, but in the situation of that one, there was some broken electrical wires, and there was a few people that didn't quite understand what happened. So we found a loose neutral or a loose common wire. It was a 208 single phase evaporator coil. And at the same time, too, there's a relay that was a QRC, the quick response controller, on the evaporator. And there was a relay on the QRC controller. The wire had broken off of the relay, and it wasn't allowing the system to go into defrost properly. So it's just cool when we get to do something like that. I like things that are different, right? Because I defrost a lot of walk-in freezers, and to have it actually not just be a door being left open is actually kind of nice for a change, because I do get those calls. So the second video that I released this week was Danger, the R290 repair. All right, first off, guys, I hope you saw the sarcasm in the title, right? And if you read the description of the video, I explained the sarcasm, okay? I realize R290 is not that big of a deal, okay? So many people are afraid of it. So many people are scared of it. It's really not that big of a deal, okay? R290 is a hydrocarbon refrigerant. It is pure, unodorized propane. Bunch of different questions about that video. One of the main questions, why is it not odorized? Okay, because the odorant is a contaminant that could potentially lead to issues in the refrigeration system. Remember that the propane that you use for your barbecue is just being burnt off, and if it's not 100% pure, it's not a big deal. Okay, the propane that they use for your barbecue actually has a lot of moisture in it. I know that from experience. When I used to have a travel trailer, I'd go get my tanks full or filled, and then they wouldn't, I would have problems with the heater in my RV. And what I actually found, that was when I learned the lesson that there's a lot of moisture in the propane that you get from the barbecue place or whatever. And so that's the difference. The propane that they're using in the refrigerators is, I believe it's 98% pure. It is unodorized. There's no moisture in it. It's highly refined propane, okay? Unlike the stuff that you get from the barbecue store and all that crap, okay? I would not suggest refilling your refrigerator or your air conditioner with propane if it was not designed for it. Keep that in mind. When I say that it's not a big deal, it isn't a big deal if you're using it properly and it was engineered to be used in the system you're working on, okay? When it comes to the hydrocarbon refrigerants, the refrigerators are set up with spark resistant or spark proof components. They don't have typical current sensing relays. They don't have typical condenser fan motors. A lot of the times they have different starting components, different condenser fan motors, and it's all spark resistant or spark free components on them, okay? So you don't want to just dump R290 propane in just a run-of-the-mill air conditioner or refrigerator, because there could be a potential or some liability issues if there is a problem in the future, all right? So when it comes to the R290 repairs, I really don't think it's a huge deal. We just have to remember that there's a few basic steps that we have to follow when working with R290 refrigerators. Philip, thank you so very much for that super chat. That is much appreciated. Wow, bud, that is awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you to everybody, right, for watching the stream, interacting with the stream. If you guys haven't already, please give the stream some sort of interaction, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever you want to do. Leave a comment. It definitely helps out the stream. Okay, even if you guys are watching this after the fact, please interact with it. YouTube plays with things right now. YouTube is playing with the numbers, and this is a really down month, which is fine. I mean, I still make these videos, but I'm just noticing a huge drop off because YouTube's not recommending this video to new people. Obviously, they're still showing it to my normal core or base of fans, but they're just not showing it around. So any interaction you guys give this video and any of my other videos will help YouTube to realize that I'm still here and people, you know, and that they should be recommending them to other people. So again, thank you very much, Philip. That is much appreciated. Okay. When it comes to the R290 refrigerators, guys, there's some basic common refrigeration practices you want to follow. And what's interesting is if you ever take an R290 training or you read about them or watch a YouTube video about them or anything like that, it's really not that different than basic refrigeration practices that we were taught in trade school or when we were first coming up. I mean, cut as many components out as you can. But I also explained that in the video that it's not always practical to cut components out of tiny refrigerators, right? Because then you lose, you know, certain space and lines. It just gets to be a pain in the butt. Purge the system with nitrogen before turning on a torch. That's just good practice in general. But especially these days, we have hydrocarbon refrigerants and we have A2L refrigerants, which are mildly flammable refrigerants, such as R32 and other ones like that, where it's going to be a good practice to purge with nitrogen or sweep the system with nitrogen before we try to unsweat any components or different things like that. So, but it's really not a huge deal. Just have common stuff ready with you, like safety stuff, fire extinguisher, towel, water hose, whatever it may be, just to make sure if there is a situation, you're ready for it. And then I always, when I'm working on R290 systems, I always, after I've opened up the first port or whatever I'm going to do, I'll take a torch and kind of wave it across the port just to make sure that there's nothing flammable still in the system. And it kind of gives you an idea what you're working with so you don't get surprised. Scott, thank you so very much for that super chat. I really, really appreciate it, man. You are amazing, bud. And you're an awesome, awesome dude. And I look forward to hopefully hanging out with you at the AHR trade show in Vegas coming up soon. Actually, no, I look forward to meeting up with you, Scott, at the iHacky trade show because I think we were going to try to meet up at that. If you guys don't already know, if you're in Southern California and you're local to me in Pasadena, in a couple weeks, we are going to be having the iHacky trade show. It's a really, really small little trade show at the Pasadena Convention Center. I will be there. I'm going to be there first thing in the morning and then hanging out till probably midday. Probably bouncing around at a couple different booths. And I know Scott was talking to me. He's HVAC rookie. He was talking to me about meeting up there. And then maybe we're going to meet up at the AHR trade show, which will be at the end of January, I believe, in Las Vegas. That's a huge trade show. I went to the last AHR trade show we had, which was 2 years ago. There was over 10,000 people in attendance. It was pretty crazy. So definitely look forward to that. And then also, I've said it before, I plan on being at the HVACR training symposium, or I should say I plan on being at the HVACR training symposium in Florida in February, Brian Orr's HVAC school event. But there's always a possibility I'll be doing an online presentation. I'm going to attempt to do an in-person, but it just depends on whether or not I can get off work in time and get out there and all that good stuff. So working out all the logistics. But James Tucker says, how did I manage with COVID with my work so I could still do my work? Well, James, when it comes to all the craziness of COVID and all the, whatever, we definitely slowed down for sure. It definitely got a little bit scary for a good couple weeks, but then it picked back up. It's still slow. The restaurants are still trying to recover because 99% of the work that I do is restaurant refrigeration and air conditioning. So they're still struggling. Restaurants are still having a hard time recuperating from all the craziness of the previous last year and a half or whatever it was. But I mean, we just did our best. We tried to stay as busy as possible and just tried to be as efficient as possible. When it comes to times like this, people are hurting, restaurants are hurting and stuff. We want to give them the best bang for their buck, basically. So the big picture diagnoses is really important. Now, they don't always go for the big picture repair, but we always show them the extra effort to make sure that we're looking at everything, trying to look out for their best interests and giving them the options and letting them make decisions. That's the cool thing about commercial. You know, I myself, if you guys don't already know, maybe one of the moderators that's in the stream right now can, Joe or someone can post a link to the HVAC Overtime channel. That'd be great. So I do a show with my friends on Friday evenings on the HVAC Overtime YouTube channel. That's with HVACR North, who's a moderator in the chat, Curious HVAC guy who I saw in here a little while ago, Adam, Muffitch, and then myself. The four of us, we do a stream on Friday evenings where it's a real hangout, and we just kind of really let things, very relaxed and just talk about nonsense. Sometimes we have great guests. This last week we had Brett Wetzel from the Advanced Refrigeration podcast. That was really cool. It's cool to hang out with people, get to know another side of them besides just the educational side. But anyways, on the Overtime show, we've been kind of talking a little bit about the sales and stuff like that some of the residential companies have to get into. And I realize sales is a part of this industry. I'm not a fan of shady selling, right? I'm not a fan of people manipulating customers and things like that. But when it comes in general, I mean, sales is a part of our trade. But one of the cool things about the commercial side, especially the light commercial refrigeration side and even the heavy refrigeration side, is you really don't have to do much as far as selling. If you just do your job and go in there and just give the customer all the information, stuff is always broken. There's always a potential for a repair, return visit, and different things like that. So if you're going into these restaurants to do a preventative maintenance, or you're just going to work on one particular piece of equipment, either way, you walk in with your eyes open and your ears open, right? And you listen. Don't put headphones on. Walk in and listen around. You hear funny noises on the roof, bring it up to management. You see something funny about the equipment, bring it up to management. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to repair it that day, but we don't have to worry so much about sales on our side because the stuff is all there. There is so much work out there to be had. All we have to do is find it, right? So we have to be on site and just say, hey, you got a lot of stuff going on here. Do you want to address any of this? And it's super easy as opposed to going into, on the residential side. And, I get it. Sometimes you do have to make sales and upsell and different things like that. But on the commercial side, that's not really a thing. You're just going in there saying, hey, you know what? I'm here working on this air conditioner. Here's what's going on. Economizer's not working right. There's oil on the compressor suction line. There's a dirty evaporator coil. Contactors look really bad. You just bring that stuff to the customer's attention and let them make decisions on whether or not they want to do it. So, let me see what else we got in here. I want to talk about something, start the stream off. I want to explain. I get a lot of emails from a lot of different people, and I have no problem when I have time, with answering people's emails and trying to help them out when they need help about certain things, okay? Lots of people email me, send YouTube comments, private messages, different things like that. Number one, understand something. I am a busy person. I actually don't explain or, put it out there how busy I am, okay? I run a business. I have a family. I do the videos thing. I barely have time to do anything. I barely have time to scratch my butt. I mean, I'm overwhelmed with a lot of stuff going on. I'm not bitching. I dug my own thing here, right? I'm the one that did this. I'm the one that made myself available to everybody, and that's fine, okay? But the reason why I'm bringing this up is if you guys email me, if you guys send me a message or whatever, and you need help with something, if I don't answer you, you can send me another message. I'm fine with that, okay? But if I don't answer you again, you don't got to be, understand something. Sometimes I just can't get to everything, okay? I'm a busy person. Sometimes I'm, over the weekend, there was someone, and he was just joking around, but I sent him a message, and I didn't take offense to anything, but he had sent a message, hey, how come you haven't answered my things? And I just said, you know what? Sometimes I don't explain how late I worked the night before. I don't explain how early I got up that morning. I don't explain that I was doing video editing for 4 hours, and then someone sends me a message and they want me to answer something right away. And again, I realize I'm not mad at the person. We clarified everything and I explained to him. I just didn't have time to answer him. Okay. So it does happen. And I'm a busy person. So I feel free to keep sending me questions and emails and comments, but if I don't get back to you, you can try to resend it again, but just remind me a couple weeks later or something if I didn't get to it, okay? I can't just answer everybody's questions. But the reason why I brought this up, there is no shame in asking for help. Absolutely no shame, okay? I know that there's some people out there, I've talked to some people, some friends of mine that don't ever call technical support. They feel like they shouldn't have to. I call technical support all the time, right? But when and if you call for help or you ask for help, don't ask unprepared. Have all the information available. If you're going to call technical support, have all the information in front of you that you think they could possibly ask. That way you're not fumbling around, okay? Have everything ready. If someone sends me an email and, and I can tell from the email, because I can tell from emails and comments and different things that they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. Guys, I don't mean to be rude, but I don't have time to walk someone through how to diagnose things and all that stuff. Now, if you email me with a question, hey, I've checked this, and this is what I get. Do you have any hints or any ideas on where I should look next? That's the kind of thing I want to see. I can't be your supervisor. I can't be the person that's going to hold your hand and walk you through things. And the same thing goes for the technical service department on the other end of the phone when you call them. You need to have that information ready. You need to be prepared. Have more than they could ever want to know. That way, if they do ask it, you have it. The 98 DeVille, thank you so very much for that super chat, man. I really appreciate it. You are awesome, okay? There's a couple of these things that came through. I've said this many times before. If you guys don't already know, there's a bunch of different ways to support this channel. The super chats are awesome. Very cool. Thank you guys very much. You don't have to do that stuff. The easiest way to support the channel is simply watch the videos from beginning to end without skipping through anything. That is the simplest way to do so, okay? If you want to go further than that, there's obviously super chats. There's the Patreon page. You can become a patron, which is just a monthly commitment, charges your credit card, whatever you choose. YouTube channel membership, same thing, a monthly commitment, charges your credit card. There's PayPal donations, bunch of different ways. But the easiest way, guys, is just watch the videos from beginning to end without skipping through anything. Simplest way to support the channel, okay? So thank you, everybody. And for those of you that choose to do super chats and go beyond the normal easy way, thank you so very much. It's amazing, okay? So always have the information ready, right? So that way you're not wasting someone else's time, okay? When you call technical support, just have it ready, right? So let's see what we got going on in the chat right now. Let's see. No, I don't need help scratching my butt, Laska. Thank you, though, okay? Let's see what else we got in here. What am I missing? Do I find that I find a lot of leaks in R290 systems? Ryan, no, I would not say that I find any more leaks in R290 systems than I find in any other refrigeration system. The cool thing about restaurant refrigeration is there are always refrigerant leaks. It's always happening because of the product that they store inside the box. Majority of the leaks on evaporator coils are caused by corrosion that is caused by improperly storing food in that refrigerator, airborne contaminants, vinegars, acids, citric acid, things from anything citrus becomes airborne and attacks the evaporator coil, okay? Think about it like this, the easiest way to understand it. The Statue of Liberty is made out of copper, okay? But it's green because of the corrosion from the environment around the Statue of Liberty. The salt water, the contaminants in the air are attacking the copper and turning it that green color, slowly deteriorating the Statue of Liberty, okay? Same thing is happening on our refrigerators. When they don't store products properly, when they don't cover them tightly, then the product that they're cooling becomes a contaminant in some cases and starts to deteriorate the evaporator coil. Same thing with the drain pans. The condensate drain heaters are one of the more common leak points on a self-contained refrigerator in my recent R290 video. Same thing. The contaminants in the box attack the evaporator, and then the evaporator condensates. The water goes down the drain, runs into the condensate drain pan, and then just sits there and warms up, and the contaminants attack the condensate drain pan heater too. Again, improperly stored foods, okay? A lot of that can be prevented, but, I give the customer the information and let them try to figure everything out. Let me see what else we got going in here. How loud is the field piece leak detector beep compared to the Infocon Stratus? John Deere fan. They are both really quiet. In my opinion, all leak detectors need to get a lot louder as far as the beeps go. But the cool thing about the Stratus and the field piece DR82 leak detector is that they have visual displays on them that will let you know. The field piece has an even better one because on the tip it lights up with a red light, so you can stick it in there and see that the tip lighting up, then you can look at the display. But the Infocon Stratus or DTEC Stratus does the same thing. It doesn't have the lighted tip, but it has the digital display on the leak detector. So both of those are great leak detectors for sure. What do I think of Bluon? Eddie Lopez. I have no opinion of Bluon. I've had some frustrations with their marketing department about a year and a half ago, but other than that, no issues whatsoever. I've never used Bluon, okay? But they have a pretty cool app that basically just goes out and finds all the manuals for all kinds of different equipment and consolidates it into one app. Mind you, though, just so that you guys know, you can find most of those manuals on the internet by going to the manufacturers. If you guys want to know, what I do on a regular basis is go into the App Store on your phone. I have the Google Play Store, and type in a bunch of search terms of things that you think there should be an app for. So Carrier air conditioners, type in Carrier air conditioning. There's like 5 different Carrier apps. One for commercial, one for residential, one for technical support, one for chillers. Most people don't even know that Carrier has apps out there. Same thing with Train, Linux. They all have an app that you can download. Tecumseh compressors, Copeland mobile app. So all you need to do is just type different things in the search bar of your app stores, whether it be Apple or Android, and you'll be surprised the different things you can find. Type in Sporlan, type in Honeywell, type in all these different things, and you'll find all kinds of different apps. Fieldpiece, Measure Quick. There's a bunch of different apps out there, and they're changing all the time. So you guys just need to download those apps, and they will help you tremendously, okay? People will often ask, how do I find this information, or how do I find that part number? Just try. If there's an app for it, a lot of the times the part numbers is in there. Cool thing about the Copeland mobile app is that there's tons of part numbers in there. You look up a compressor and it tells you all the rotolock valves, crankcase heaters, starting components, resistance values. It's all in their app. So there's so much information out there. I will say that I don't feel like the manufacturers of and the creators of those apps do a good job of letting people know that they're out there. And I feel like social influencers like myself and a couple other ones spread the word more than the manufacturers do about their own apps. Ironically, I don't get anything in return for spreading that information, but I like to share the little bit of knowledge that I have with you guys. So I do it. Okay. So, today I wanted to talk about an interesting call I had today. So a couple weeks ago, I got called out on a Fullet ice machine. It is a Horizon 700 series machine. If any of you guys have worked on Fullet, it's sitting on top of a soda dispenser at a local gas station. And they called me out there a couple weeks ago. They said the ice machine wasn't working. When I went out there, it was, I don't have a video on this, by the way, but it was going off on high amps on the gear motor. But what was interesting is the shaft seal on the ice machine was leaking. There was water actively dripping from the shaft seal on the ice machine. Now, if you guys have never worked on a Fullet ice machine, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. But if you have, you know, it's a pain, okay? Especially on the 700 series, because I believe this was the first machine where they laid the evaporator sideways. And this is like the first iteration of the 700 series. I'll tell you how much of a nightmare it is. When you go to Fullet's website and you look up the 700 series machine, none of the part numbers match up to this machine because this was the one that was the guinea pig, and they changed everything since this machine. So it's just a headache for me to work on. But anyways, I ended up having to order a new shaft seal and a water dump valve. And of course the water dump valve came wrong because they cannot find the part numbers. That's a whole nother thing. But I went back today and we had to do a full teardown on the machine. Fullet machines are a pain, right? So we pulled the whole thing apart. We had to do it elsewhere from where it could plug in. So we had to do it all, pull it apart, put it back together, and the dang thing is still going off on high gear motor failure. And it's like, man. And what I fear is because the shaft seal had been leaking for so long, because there was calcium everywhere in the drain pan of the machine, and there was calcium all over the gear motor too, and all over the bearing. So I fear that that water had seeped into the bearing and caused some damage inside the bearings. I don't know if that's the case, but we're going to have to order a gear motor for it, which is frustrating because we literally spent like 7 hours today getting the machine. It's a pain in the butt to get it down and then cleaning it, putting it back up, taking it back down, cleaning it again, putting it back up. We had to sand the evaporator barrel. It was a pain, man. Sometimes some of those machines can really give you a run for your money, but you know, it was important because I was really frustrated and it wasn't making sense what was going on. I called technical support. They told me just to double check a few things. But other than that, we just got to basically step back. I had to tell the owner of the business, like, hey, this is what's going on, because improper preventative maintenance, you know, we weren't doing enough preventative maintenance in the last couple months at that location. And this is what kind of came about because of it. You know, we have these failures, and then it just gets kind of frustrating because I had to spend, you know, 7 hours today cleaning the machine to put it back up there to say, oh, it still doesn't work. Now we need to order this part, you know? And even then I'm like, I'm assuming it's the gear motor, but it's kind of hard to say because it could be some other things too. Everything seems okay on the machine, but what a frustrating headache on that one. Let me look at the chat and see what we got going on in here. Alaska, was it a big shaft or a small shaft? I don't know it was small. Let me see what you were going here. Let me see what we got on. Discussion on ladder safety for rooftops. Tyler, you know, basically you want to follow proper OSHA required things, best practices from OSHA, basically. So when you're using extension ladders and different things like that, you want to use some common sense too. You don't want to set them up on an uneven surface. You want to make sure they're extending past the roof parapet or the roof edge by however many feet OSHA requires. What is it, 3 or 4 feet for, I don't know, there's like angles and departure, whatever. Just be safe and make sure you follow basic OSHA practices. You know, there's one thing that I don't do very much on my channel, and that is safety stuff. I try to practice safe work habits and things, and I try to share as much of those as possible, but I am not a certified OSHA training establishment or anything like that. So I don't really go deep into the woods on that kind of stuff. I understand basic, and to be honest with you, most of the OSHA requirements and different things like that are pretty basic. You know, I mean, as long as you use common sense. Let me see what's going on here. Oh, okay. I'll answer your question. I saw Richard Roselle. I see that you emailed me, and I will answer your question after the stream. Okay. He was asking me some questions about supporting the channel and stuff, so I will answer your questions after. One thing I need to do right now is, it is fall and it is raining outside, and my family is nuts, so I am going to override the thermostat right now and bring the temperature of the house down to 72 degrees because I'm dying in my office right now. I recently upgraded my computer, so I have a giant computer on the backside. I don't know that you guys can see it. Let me see here. I don't think you can see it if I transition over. No, you guys can't see it if I transition over. But I have a giant computer over here, and boy, does it put out some heat when that thing is really cooking. But we got a million fans on it. It's got liquid cooling, and it heats up my office super fast. So I am dying in here. On top of that, I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt. All right. So how do I go about charging as far as how much to charge the customer? This was a question that I got on my recent video for 2.8 ounces of R290. So someone had emailed me and they were asking me how how they should go about charging for the refrigerant that they use. Now, in the question that you sent me to the person that asked it, you had said, you know, I charge this much if I have to put this refrigerant in, or this much if I have to put that refrigerant in. Okay, so what you need to do to figure out how much to charge for the refrigerant you're using is you need to know what your expectations are and how much of a profit you want to make. You need to figure out your overhead costs. That's really complicated to figure out and really complicated for me to explain to you. I have a multiplier that I use for refrigerant. I'm not going to say it on here, but that multiplier accounts for, you know, different things that might happen when you're charging for refrigerants. Okay. But you just basically need to figure out what you need to charge. Now, I also use some basic common sense. When you're working with R290, right, there's very minimal charge in some of those cans, okay? So oftentimes when I use a can of R290, the cans that I use right now are 14-ounce cans. I charge for the entire can. Now, here's my logic behind that. R290 comes in a 14-ounce can. Majority of the time, the maximum charge for R290 at this point in time right now is 150 grams, which is like 5.67 ounces or something like that. If you have a 14-ounce can, if you put in, let's just say 6 ounces, okay, you're probably not going to be able to use that can again to get a full charge for the next 6-ounce refrigerator, because you're never going to completely get all the refrigerant out of that can when it's such a small volume and amount of refrigerant in there. Keep in mind, whenever you guys use 410A or R22 or 404A, at the end of the day, when you're all done using a cylinder, right, and no more refrigerant will go into there, there's always a little bit of vapor left in there. Yes, you can get a recovery machine out, but that's not very practical, okay? But with R290, you're not using a recovery machine for that. So you have to account for that kind of stuff when you go to charge for it, and that's how I do it. So I've even talked to the manufacturers, like, because most of the R290 work up until last year was pretty much warranty work, but now it's starting to fall on the customer because majority of the equipment's out of warranty. So what we do is oftentimes if we charge an R290 system, we charge them for the entire can of refrigerant. Now, on the refrigerator that I did 2.8 ounces, yeah, that one I can probably get one more use out of that can. But I do have a dollar amount assigned to a per pound charge for R290, okay? And when I do sell refrigerant, I sell by the pound, okay? And I round on that. So if I put in, you know, a pound 4 ounces, I only charge the customer for a pound. But if I put in a pound 6 ounces or whatever, then I charge them for 2 pounds. Okay. And it all works out in the long run on that one. But, you know, everybody has different business practices and different ways that they go about it. But you have to remember that you don't want to lose out on things, right? So when you're using those small little cans of refrigerant, keep that in mind, because there's always going to be leftover refrigerant or R290 in those cans, and that's a loss. And it's been a while since I've looked at the price of R290, but for a while, it was rather expensive if you looked at it on a per pound basis. It was stupid expensive. So keep that in mind when you guys are charging, and make sure you're charging accordingly. That way you guys can make a profit on that kind of stuff. Bill is asking if anybody uses that special little R290 scale that holds the can upside down. You know, one of my techs, Bill, has that scale. I have yet to see him use it. One of these days I should probably borrow it from him. I just use a little piece of cardboard to hold my cylinder up, invert it, and go to town. But I guess I'll have to look into one of those little scales. Let's see what else we got going on in here. What am I missing about? How do I clean oil or lubricant residues from hoses? Jose, I would just use like a degreaser or something like that if you're going to do that. Refrigeration Technologies has an all-purpose. It's their purple Venom pack. Does a great job of degreasing things or getting stuff off of your hoses, different stuff like that. They're also their hand wipes, the Viper wipes. Those things do really good at cleaning grease and grime and stuff off stuff. Let's see what else we got going on in here. Looking to see what I missed up in here. Doesn't look like I missed much. All right, cool. I'm going to go ahead and get to the rest of the things on my list. So I'm going to cross this one off. Let's go ahead and cross that off. Anthony had asked me to, this is a good question. Anthony asked me to discuss the approximate pressures and temperatures that I would expect to see on a reach-in cooler and a walk-in. I'm assuming that Anthony, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of elaborate on his question too. I'm assuming that Anthony kind of wants to get an idea how to know before he goes up to work on a refrigerator what the refrigerant pressure should be. I've said that many times. I'm not the person that coined that phrase. I believe the first person I heard say it was Jim Bergman. I don't know if he coined it either. But we have no business putting our gauges on something if we don't already know what the refrigerant pressure should be before we put our gauges on there, okay? And there's a lot of good information in that statement, right? Because we need to have a general understanding of what we're looking for. Otherwise, we're just putting our gauges on there just to say, okay, those look interesting, you know? So how do I know walking up to a refrigerator what the pressure should be? Well, if you're working on a walk-in cooler or walk-in freezer, if it's just a basic walk-in cooler and walk-in freezer, typically they're going to run with a 10-degree evaporator TD. The TD is the temperature differential, right? And we're referring to the space temperature versus the saturated temperature of the refrigerant. So typically on a walk-in cooler that is down to temperature, that is not a crazy engineered system, the saturation temperature of the refrigerant is going to be about 10 degrees below the box temperature, all right? when it's pretty much down to temperature. You want to keep that in mind. Just like with superheat, you want to check or verify the TD when it's almost down to temperature, okay? Same thing goes for walk-in freezers. So if we know that we want to maintain 38 degrees in the walk-in box and it's 38 degrees, and then we know that our suction saturation temperature should be approximately 10 degrees below the box temperature, right? Of course, paying attention to the sight glass, the head pressure, subcooling, all that good stuff, okay? Now, when it comes to reach-in refrigerators, those can be a little more tricky. Each manufacturer of reach-in refrigerator beats to the tune of their own drum. They do different things to make their refrigerator stand apart from the next guy, okay? So it can be difficult understanding what your pressure should be on that refrigerator. What I would suggest you do, there's a little life hack. If you want to find out what the evaporator TD is on a refrigerator, either look up a service manual for the refrigerator you're working on. I work on a lot of Delfield refrigerators. Go to Delfield's website, download the service manual, and it'll tell you operating pressures, this and this, okay? Now, understand something. Most manufacturers of refrigerators out there, they're not going to share what the superheat and the subcooling and the TD should be and all this different stuff. But what they will tell you is what the pressure should be. So if they tell you what the high side and the low side pressures are at a certain ambient temperature outside or, in the space and a certain box temperature, you could backwards calculate what kind of a TD that system's going to have for the condenser and the evaporator. So if they say that 404 refrigerator should have 53 suction and 240 head pressure, well, take 53 psi with 404A, find the saturated temperature of that refrigerant at 53 psi. Now you know the saturation temperature, and find out what they want the temperature of the box to be when you're checking those pressures, typically down to temperature. So if it's a refrigerator, 38 degrees, right? So if you take the saturated temperature of 404A, I'm looking at a pressure temperature chart right now, at 55 psi, that would be 20 degree evaporator, all right? And you have a 38 degree box. So 38 minus 20 degrees is 18 degrees. So that's an 18 degree TD on that evaporator coil. So from that point forward, if you ever work on one of those little 404 boxes, they're typically running whatever the evaporator TD was. And the same thing goes for the condenser TD. Now, I don't always know what they're going to be, right? But I have a general idea of what the pressures and saturation temperatures should be. So therefore, I do have some rules of thumb, all right? If it's a microchannel condenser on something, they're typically going to be a 20 degree condensing temp over ambient or condenser TD, right? And if it's a tube and fin condenser, it's typically going to be a 30 degree condensing temp over ambient or 30 degree TD on the condenser. And so forth, okay? So you can always lean on the manufacturers, find out what the TDs should be, and that'll kind of get you in the ballpark and help you to diagnose a little bit further. It just takes some research and some backwards ingenuity to try to figure out what the manufacturers are doing, okay? Let me see if I'm missing anything in the chat right now. All right, there's that. I'm looking here. Is Chris sober tonight? Yes, I am sober tonight. Absolutely. But I do have a drink right here. I'm looking through the chat. All right, I see it. Okay, so it says HVAC with Greg. You're still on residential install. Eventually you want to move to service. Right on, Greg. That should be awesome, bud. You should do great. All right. Okay. Can you top off R290 JYPHC? You're not supposed to. Okay. And let's look at it this way. If there's an R290 leak, there's active flammable refrigerant leaking into a enclosed space that has a door, has an evaporator fan motor running, and different things like that. Okay. So you're not supposed to top off flammable refrigerants. Okay. Best practices say, turn the system off. If you're not going to let the refrigerant out, take the system out of commission. Whenever I work on an R290 unit, I don't top off the charge. If I find one that has a leak, I disable the unit so it cannot be plugged in. I'll pull the cord off, tape it up, cut the cord, do something. Okay. Make it so that the customer cannot plug it back in. Order the parts that I need to order, then I'll come back out. I do know that there's some people out there that top off R290 systems and it gets them by just fine. Not my style, not something I feel comfortable doing. Okay. All right. I crossed that question off the list. Let's talk about setting pressure controls. Oh, I still got more. Alaska. We got another drink too. So let's talk about setting pressure controls. There's a lot of confusion and misinformation on setting pressure controls, low pressure controls, specifically on pump down systems. Okay. First thing, if you have a pump down system, let's define that. You have a refrigeration system that has a solenoid valve somewhere, and when the temperature controller satisfies, it turns off the solenoid valve, therefore stopping the flow of refrigerant out of the solenoid valve. So the evaporator continues to run, the compressor continues to run, and the suction pressure drops lower and lower and lower until it gets to a predetermined set point. And it shuts the compressor off because the pressure control protects the compressor on a low loss safety or on a pump down safety. So it's shutting down. Now, setting and figuring out where to set that pressure control can be kind of tricky, because in the past we had reciprocating compressors, right? Compressors with pistons. And nowadays, majority of our compressors are scroll compressors, especially on walk-ins and air conditioners. And especially on walk-ins, scroll compressors require a little bit different logic when setting up a pressure control setting for a pump down situation, okay? Because scroll compressors do not like to run in a vacuum and or get close to a vacuum. They actually have a floating seal in the compressor. Hold on. This is the head off of a tiny scroll compressor, and you have a floating seal right here, and this moves up and down within here. Now this one's damaged. This will be for another day, another video. This is something that Trevor Matthews and I are going to talk about from, what is Trevor's social media stuff? I can't think of it right now. Refrigeration Mentor is his project he's working on right now. But this is your floating seal, and this moves up and down depending on the compressor being on or off, okay? And when the compressor turns on, boom, it moves up and then moves down and different things like that. So if a scroll compressor runs too low, the floating seal and mechanisms inside of it can actually bring the divert gas from the high side of the compressor into the suction side, and the compressor will short cycle to turn on, turn off. So if you try to set the cutout setting on a low pressure control too low on a scroll compressor, and if you're watching your gauges, what you'll notice, it pulls down to like 4 PSI, and then when the compressor shuts off, all of a sudden the suction pressure shoots up. It goes, it's like a bleed off valve. And it goes, and it turns back on. And then it pumps down again, and then it turns back on. And then it pumps down again, and it turns back. And it literally is a never-ending cycle, on, off, on, off, on, off. Eventually, until there's catastrophic compressor failure because of lack of cooling coming back to the compressor. And that's because pressure controls are improperly set. Now, Copeland has a service bulletin out there that they want you to put a time delay relay, delay on break timer, I believe, to where it won't let it turn back on in short cycle for a predetermined amount of time, like 3 minutes or something like that. But to get to the root cause is setting the pressure control appropriately. So you always want to lean on the manufacturer of the compressor to find out how they recommend and what settings they want you to set the pressure control at. But some considerations when it comes to setting pump down controls or low pressure controls on compressors is the conditions of which the condensing unit is sitting in. What are the ambient conditions of the condensing unit, and what is the space temperature of the box, okay? Because you have to remember something. When a pressure control shuts the system off, and the condensing unit's outside, that condensing unit's ambient temperatures affects the way that the refrigerant moves through the system when the solenoid valve opens back up. So you have to take into consideration your outdoor ambient conditions. If it gets -10 outside, you have to take that into consideration when you're setting your pressure control. You may have to add things to the system to help, because -10 degrees, what's going to happen? That solenoid valve is going to open, and that refrigerant is really going to have a hard time moving around because it's trying to move to a higher temperature and it's trying to move into a higher pressure, and it doesn't want to because it's colder outside. So it's going to struggle. So there's things you can do, you know, in really, really cold ambience, receiver heaters and different stuff like that. But the most important thing you want to understand is it's not as simple as just setting it to cut out at 5 PSI and turn on at 25 PSI or whatever, because you're going to require the ambient temperature to help to drive the refrigerant through the system. Okay. So you got to keep that in mind when you're setting pressure controls. It also comes into play with head pressure control valves and different stuff like that. So always lean on the manufacturer and know that the ambient conditions outside will affect the way that you set your pressure controls. So hopefully that kind of gives you guys some clarification. I don't know if I really made people more confused or what. How funny you were watching with Trevor with Brian before my stream. Yeah, Trevor just did something with Brian. Trevor's a cool dude. Him and I have been talking about working together and doing a collaboration. It's just been me. Trevor's like totally ready to do it. I'm just the one that's been busy and haven't been able to do that. So, what is the noise it makes? Ka-choo! Come on, Peter Griffin. You know what that is. All right. Let me see what else. All right. What does my company deal on changeouts or new installs? HVAC with Greg. I am a retrofit guy. I don't do new construction. I do restaurant refrigeration and air conditioning. So I will replace equipment on existing stuff, but I don't build walk-ins. I don't install air conditioners from the ground up. I will replace package units all day long, repair ductwork, stuff like that. But I don't do new installation construction at all. I had a question about my thermal imaging camera. What thermal imaging camera I have been using. I've tried several different thermal imaging cameras. I tried the SeekShot Pro. I tried the FLIR C3. I tried the FLIR 1 Pro. I thought there was one more, but regardless, I settled on the FLIR 1 Pro. It's because of ease of use, and it uses your phone's processing power, so you get a more accurate and more power from the camera. And those are basic thermal imaging cameras, guys. You can, those are all at the price point under $600 a piece. If you want to spend thousands and thousands of dollars, you can buy highly accurate, hundreds of thousands of dollars for thermal imaging cameras, but I don't need that kind of stuff. So the FLIR 1 Pro is a little dongle that plugs into my phone, but I will say with the FLIR 1 Pro in an Otter case, it with every phone is a little different. For the most part, I have to pull the jacket off my phone to plug my FLIR 1 Pro. Even if I extend it all the way out with this new phone, I have to pull that rubber off for the Otter case to get it to work. I don't like any of those stupid dongle extenders or anything like that. They're all junk. I don't like them. So I just like the extender that comes on the FLIR 1 Pro, and I just pull my case down a little bit, shove it in, and it works perfect. Let's see. Let me look at the chat, see what I'm missing. Have I had issues with delay on break, relay on Beacon 2 systems? Josh Howell, that is a great question. And yes, I'm going to explain this right now. I was just having this discussion with a supply house manager. Okay. First off, Josh, don't let me forget to talk about this. I'm going to explain a frustration that I have. Supply houses in general are not given the tools. They're expected to do a lot, and they don't completely understand the equipment that they're selling. So it's a frustration, but at the same time, I've learned not to trust the supply houses, and I do my own research and do my own load calculations and different things like that. So I was talking with the supply house manager about Heatcraft's refrigeration system. So a lot of the times on Heatcraft systems, they will come, especially with the QRC controller, okay, the quick response controller, or even the IntelliGen, which is their new system. The evaporator is the only smart part, okay? The condensing unit, it can be any condensing unit, but if you buy a Heatcraft condensing unit, Heatcraft condensing units with scroll compressors come with the factory delay timer that I talked about earlier, because they have Copeland compressors, or sometimes they have LGs, but they always come with the factory delay that Copeland recommends. But the problem is when you're working with IntelliGen or Beacon 2 or different things like that, you're not actually supposed to use those delay relays, okay? And that's when you really have to get into the nitty-gritty of properly setting your pressure controls, because if you have a QRC system or an IntelliGen system and it has a time delay in the condensing unit and you're running into nuisance issues for superheat errors and different things like that, pull that delay timer out. Heatcraft actually has a service bulletin that they do not want a delay timer installed in the condensing unit on a QRC system or an IntelliGen system. So there should not be a delay. Now, when I say QRC or IntelliGen, the Beacon systems I'm not as familiar with, but I know a lot of the IntelliGen, a lot of the QRCs actually use a Beacon 2 board in them. But the Beacon system is actually a fully communicating system to where the pressure controls and different things are connected to the board. So I don't know about the delay timer on the Beacon 2 system, but I do know for sure on the QRC system and the IntelliGen system, that delay timer in the condensing unit needs to be taken out, and it cannot be left in the system. It's going to mess everything up. So anyways, but what I was talking about to the supply house manager was I was explaining this to the supply house manager, and he's like, really? I've never heard that. And it's like, wow, Why am I going into supply houses? And this is a complaint that I have. Why is it that I walk into a supply house and I say, hey, you guys, check out this new tool I got? And they're like, what is that? Don't you think it should be the other way around? Don't you think the supply houses should be selling me on tools and not me selling the supply house on tools? And the same thing goes with equipment. I'll walk in and I'll be talking about something new. Oh, this company just came out with this new part. And they're like, oh, really? Oh, we should order some of those. And it's like, why am I telling them? You know, there's such a communication breakdown between manufacturers and supply houses and different things like that. It's kind of frustrating. You know, it sucks because I shouldn't be the one out there telling supply houses about the new stuff in the industry. It just seems silly to me. Let's see. Frost HVAC says he's going to dress up as A2L refrigerants to scare techs. Hey, that's the truth, man. So many people are afraid of A2L refrigerants. Oh no, R32 is going to blow us all up. Did you guys know that R32 is one of the main components in 410A? You guys have been working with it for years. It's just in the current mixture in 410A, it's not an A2L. Okay, it's not that big of a deal. They're mildly flammable. Okay, get into some of the real flammable stuff and then tell me how big of a deal it is, you know? And it was just announced. I don't know when it's going to go into full effect, but they are increasing the charge limitations on R290 too. Up to 500 grams in open cases. And then I think it's like 300 grams on totally enclosed reach-in coolers and stuff like that. So that's going to open the door and we are going to see more R290 equipment out there. When that change is actually going to come into effect, I don't know, but I know that it was just announced and they approved it and all this stuff. So I can't wait. I think R290 is going to be the future. I think that a lot of people are going to be changing over to it. I'm surprised. I've said this a million times that they haven't come up with some type of chiller system for residential applications where you can use a hydrocarbon refrigerant outside and you're just pushing glycol or something like that into the house. And with the advent of PEX and all this different stuff that we have these days, it wouldn't be that difficult to properly insulate the lines and run them inside and have an air handler that's, you know, got some sort of a fluid in it versus like glycol or something versus having refrigerant in it. Then you can contain the R290 outside, you know, and I think that's what's going to happen in the future. Dress up as a TXV and stand in the window of newbie techs at night. That's funny. All right. Let me see what else we got in here. If you guys have things you want me to talk about, do put them in caps lock. That way I can see what's going on there. Okay. Walk-in freezers. When it comes to defrosting walk-in freezers, guys, it really doesn't have to be a big deal. So many people, I get comments from them, you know, oh, it makes the biggest mess in the world when I defrost a walk-in freezer. Guys, if you're just careful about things, put pans under there and only spray it off until the drain pan starts to fill up, then stop and let the drain pan catch up. You know, I don't make messes in walk-in freezers ever. I've got pans under there. Now, I'm probably a little more crazy than most people, but I don't make messes. I take my time and do it right. I got to say thanks to my wife. She got me a mini refrigerator for Christmas like last year. This tiny little 2 foot by 2 foot refrigerator so I can have my drinks inside there. This is a this has been my jam lately. For the longest time I was drinking the Rogue Hazelnut Brown, and I still drink those too, but this one right here is the AleSmith Nut Brown. This one is kind of my go-to right now. Super good. I like the brown ales. They're my favorite. All right, let's see what I got going on in here. There you go. Rich, GT350R. Good to see you, Rich. I haven't seen you in a while. I saw some videos popping up on your channel. Those were pretty cool, man. That was pretty neat to see you do that stuff. And then to see the cold start on your car the other day, too. That was really neat, Rich. But yeah, he says back in the 50s, natural gas was used in refrigerators. Full circle. Hey, you know what? Yeah, I mean, look, the hippies have their way. Right? We wouldn't even have water to water our grass with, okay? But they're going to keep getting their way. So they're going to, basically every refrigerant we're using today is going to be gone tomorrow, okay? They're getting rid of everything. Every 400 series refrigerant out there is going out the door. 448A, which is what we're using on walk-in coolers and freezers a lot lately, that stuff's going away too. Every one of those has an end date to it, okay? Right now, the favorites are the R290s, the isobutane, and the CO2. Those are the favorites right now, but I'm sure they'll come up with something new tomorrow, some kind of new technology. And that's the cool thing about being a service technician is it's always changing, right? Yes, you know, change makes us have to do extra work, but guess what? it keeps us busy and it makes us stay on our toes, and we have to learn something new and we become even more valuable. So embrace the change, you know? All right. Can R22 refrigerant work in a 410A system? Well, I mean, it would do something, but would it work efficiently and properly? No. Okay. You're going to have issues there. The compressor's not set up to displace the gas, the displacements and everything's going to be different. So will it do something? Yeah. Will it work properly? No. You know, I mean, so, I mean, it's a refrigerant, you know, compression and everything's going to happen, but it's not going to work efficiently. No. Let's see what else. What do we got in here? Ah, Rich has been lurking. I got you, man. Well, good to see you again, Rich. Good to hear from you, man. All right. Walk-in freezers. I talked about that. We don't have to be messy. It doesn't have to be a big deal. Use some hot water and be careful, right? Hot water is my best friend when it comes to defrosting walk-ins. I get people emailing me saying, how come I don't use a torch? Torches are the best, da, 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 da. I prefer not to use a torch on a walk-in freezer. Too much stuff can get damaged with the flame. I prefer hot water. Shut the system off. Be cautious. Don't let the drain pans overflow. It seems to be super efficient for me, and it gets my job done really fast. Had a question from someone, and this was a good question because I've talked about this before, that you need to pay attention when you're defrosting evaporator coils and different things like that to the frost patterns. And the question was, what goes through my head? The first thing that goes through my head when I walk up to a walk-in freezer that's iced up, the first thing that goes through my head is I walk up and I look at the frost pattern. Now, each frost pattern doesn't necessarily mean X or Y or Z to me, but I always pay attention to the frost pattern. If I see a total coil top to bottom, left to right, all the way through frozen up, that typically means that it got too cold or it ran too long. Okay. That's usually what that means, or it didn't defrost, or that would be run too long. If I go up to a system and only half the coil's iced up, it's probably a refrigeration problem. Okay. Those are things that go into my head. If you don't feel comfortable working on walk-in freezers, what I would encourage you to do is put the system into defrost. If it has electric defrost, while it's still frozen up, and test all the heaters so you can see what's going on in there. But as far as what goes through my head, the first thing I'm going to do is look at the frost pattern. Is it solid, or is it just half the coil or something? All right. Is it sporadic? You know, just pay attention because that leads you in different directions. The next thing I'm going to do when I walk up to a system is I'm going to turn it off, take it apart, defrost it. You cannot troubleshoot anything besides the defrost circuit when it's frozen up. You can't do refrigeration testing. You can't look at a sight glass. You can't look at refrigerant pressures when it's frozen up. So the next thing is get all that ice out of the picture. All the side panels all the way through, that ice has to be gone. Someone emailed me the other day and they said, here's my pressures, the system's iced up. What do you think I should do? And I said, get rid of the ice. And he said, well, my boss doesn't want to shut the system down. I don't know what else to tell you. You can't troubleshoot those walk-in freezers as far as refrigeration wise until all the ice is gone. Okay. The ice has to be 100% gone, and then you can go about troubleshooting as to why. Am I looking at TXVs because it's icing up? Not necessarily. Okay. It's very rare that a TXV is going to cause a walk-in freezer or walk-in cooler to ice up. Now, you might have a TXV that's got a restriction in it, that a strainer's plugged up or something, and you might have frost on the TXV, but typically it's not going to be iced up the whole walk-in because of a TXV. No, that doesn't really make sense. Okay. That's not a very common thing that's going to happen. So first off, get the ice removed, then troubleshoot the system from there. All right. Big picture kind of stuff. See what else we got going on here. Keep the brain active with new refrigerants. Definitely. There's always new stuff. Can twist timers work on Heatcraft intelligence systems like the QRC controllers? Yes. I had a few questions about the twist timer on a recent video that I did for the QRC system, the quick response controller. And the twist timer is a pump down switch. Oftentimes we have a twist timer on the outside of the box so that it's a load switch. Whenever the customer knows that they're going to open the door for more than a minute or two, I encourage them to turn the twist timer so the system pumps down and turns off so they can get in and out of the box. It's like turning off a breaker, but the cool thing about a twist timer is it's automatic. It turns back on automatically. Okay. So I install 15-minute twist timers. If you guys don't already know, that the twist timers are typically OE or special order. Okay. They're not OEM specific, but they're special order. So I use Intermatic twist timers. They're 15-minute. They're normally open, normally closed. And the part number is an FF315 Mary. I have too many numbers in my head, but FF315 Mary is the part number for the 15-minute twist timer for the Intermatic timers. Little guy right there. It's only 15 minutes. Won't be off too long. Just enough for them to do what they have to do, then close the door. But yes, it can work on the intelligence system. They have a special circuit on it, so that way it pumps the system down. Have I ever done something against what the manufacturer says and the system works perfectly fine? Of course, R410A. I have done that, but you're taking a lot of risk and you're taking things into your own hands. It's always best to follow proper installation practices and what the manufacturer says. Occasionally, and I say this occasionally because if you're going to step beyond the manufacturer's recommendations, you're really getting into sketchy territory here, right? And you really have to know what you're doing. So there has been times when I've altered systems or re-engineered systems because of a massive design flaw or different things like that and made them work the way that I want them to work. But that is not common practice. That's not something I teach to my technicians. I usually take that on as my responsibility because I'm the one that's going to have to own up to it if it doesn't work. So field modifying a system beyond the way that it was engineered, you need to be very cautious about that. Now, also you need to think about liability. When it comes to things like hydrocarbon refrigerants, there is absolutely no exception to modify a hydrocarbon refrigerant system. Think about it this way. Hydrocarbons R290 or isobutane, okay? They are highly flammable refrigerants. Think about this. If you make an alteration to that refrigerator, something as stupid as putting an aftermarket receptacle or plug on it, okay? If you make an alteration to that, if, forbid, something bad happens with that refrigerator, if there's a fire or anything like that, I can 100% guarantee you that the customer's insurance company is going to go after that manufacturer, and that manufacturer is going to send people out to figure out what went wrong with their refrigerator. In the moment that they see an alteration to their design, their lawyers are going to rip that apart and say, this thing was modified by someone else. Maybe they did something else to it. Who knows? It's not our thing anymore. So the moment that you modify some of these refrigerators, especially with hydrocarbons in them, you are taking a liability on yourself. And trust me, those manufacturers' lawyers have a lot more money than you do, and they're going to do what they have to do to protect their own. So be very cautious about modifying anything of flammable nature, that has combustion going on with it, furnaces, heat exchangers. Don't modify any of that stuff. Stick with OEM. That way you cover your butt, right? And follow proper manufacturer's practices. Let's see. What am I missing? I'm looking through the chat right now. You got lots of cool questions going on in here. All right, cool. So I'm going to, what tonnage types of HVAC and reefer do I work on? Are there am I a brand specific cheerleader? Joe, is it Fiducioso? I don't know if I butchered your name there, but Fiducioso. I work on light commercial refrigeration. So I work on gas heat package units or heat pumps no bigger than 35 tons. I work on refrigeration systems, typically 5 horsepower and smaller. And that's what I work on. Am I specific or partial to any brand? I mean, I have things that I'm comfortable working on. I'm not necessarily going to say that they're better than other brands. I love working on Lennox package units. I love working on Manitowoc ice machines, Hoshizaki ice machines. It's just the things that I'm comfortable with, right? There's people that swear by Isomatic and Scotsman. So be it for the ice machines. I just don't work on them very often. So when I do work on them, it's like, oh, I got to remember this and I got to remember that. When it comes to Hoshizaki and Manitowoc, it's like, in the back of my head, super, I can almost do it blindfolded. So it's really what I'm comfortable in working on. I'm not going to say that someone else is worse than another one. And I'd say that's kind of the same about anything. When consumers reach out to me, residential people, and say, what air conditioner should I buy? I say, ask your service company. What is your service company comfortable working on? Who do they work with regularly as far as warranty and stuff like that? Sure, insert name of manufacturer. They have all kinds of fancy things that space shuttles and all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Inverter systems and whatever. But if you don't have a contractor or you have a contractor installing something, he doesn't know how it works, that's a problem. So it's really about what you're comfortable working on. And I'm not going to say it's necessarily that the other manufacturer is bad or better or whatever. It's just what I'm comfortable working on, if that makes sense. Let's see what else. He runs with the last pronunciation, fiducioso. I don't know how I pronounce it, but hopefully I got it there for you. Let's see what else we got in here. Your stomach's too strong for the bell. That's funny. When I'm doing, I get this question quite often. Majority of the time, I think that they're not contractors or not service technicians. Guys, I use this YouTube thing as a form of expression, right? I try to share the little bit of knowledge that I have, but I also vent to you guys. Venting, in my opinion, is something super healthy, and I feel like we need a place to vent frustrations and things that are fun and whatever, right? We need to be able to vent and talk about it. So I talk to my friends and I talk about things in videos because it's become a part of my life, making videos. So yes, sometimes I get frustrated when I have to go on an overtime service call or an after-hours service call. But then I get someone or multiple people in the comments saying, "Why are you frustrated? You're getting paid." I mean, it's natural. I'm still frustrated. I don't want to go out at 2 a.m. to work on a refrigerator or 10 o'clock at night. Yes, I'm getting paid. And yes, I'm getting paid very good wages. But sometimes it's not just about money. Sometimes, and there's nothing worse than being really frustrated when they tell you too much information. And they tell you that it's been down for multiple days or they've been defrosting it themselves or whatever. And then now they need you on an emergency basis. So I don't ever vent to the customers. I keep my opinion to myself and to you guys, and I use this channel as a form of expression. So I'm human. If I didn't vent and I didn't express myself, then I would basically explode. I would bottle. I've done that in the past. That's why I had to go see doctors and seek help and stuff for my mental issues, because I used to bottle everything up. So now, every once in a while I vent a frustration here and there, but I also do it to make sure that people know that we're all human and we all have the same frustrations, whether we'll admit it or not. Nobody wants to go out at 2 a.m. when they've been sleeping to get an emergency service call to go work on a walk-in. Yeah, it might be at the end of the day when the job's all done, it was a cool job, but you can't tell me that someone really wants to wake up from a dead sleep and go out at 2 a.m. to go do a service call. Maybe there's someone out there that likes that. I don't. All right. Do I leave service taps on R290 reach-ins after a fix? Josh. So yeah, that's on my list of things to talk about. But so here's my thing. If I'm working on an R290 cooler, and majority of the time, I have instructed my service technicians to leave the service taps on the system when they are done. Okay. If I'm going to a customer that I don't normally service, then there's a very good possibility that I'm going to take the service taps off. Okay. But if it's one of my normal customers, I typically don't work on new customers, okay? I work with my existing customers majority of the time. So, and yes, I'm going to leave the service taps on the system. So when R290 first came out, the manufacturers had all kinds of requirements, and they send the systems out without service taps on them, and then they want you to remove the service taps when you're done, okay? But I see a risk, especially, I'm not concerned about myself, but for my employees, I see a risk in pinching off the service taps, cutting it, and welding it shut. And I don't want to take that risk on. It's an unnecessary risk for my employees. And I decided to make it a company policy that if we're working on R290 coolers, that we leave the service taps on after we're done. Okay. So it is what it is. Now there's going to be repercussions because of that, because technically I'm changing what the manufacturers want me to do, but it's about the safety of my employees. And I decide to go ahead and take them off. Okay, so I take them off. I leave them on. So you guys get what I'm saying there. I kind of stumbled over my words, but see what else. Do I snap my rubber gloves in customers' faces to assert dominance? No, Alaska. Any recommendations to have walk-in doors self-closing? Just good spring-loaded hinges and closures. Caisson 1248 hinges are my favorite hinges, and the 1094 door closures are my favorite door closures. So, Joe Fiducioso, you're really making me struggle to say your name, Joe. Joe Fiducioso. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. Thank you so much for becoming a channel supporter, bud. So channel supporting, just like in the very beginning I talked about it, is just like Patreon. YouTube channel member or channel supporter, Joe has chosen to make a monthly commitment to the channel. There's multiple amounts on there, starting at like $1.99 a month all the way up to like 20 or something like that. And he's made a commitment to do that. So thank you very much, Joe. That's awesome, bud. Am I worried about manufacturers denying warranty? Josh Howell. Yes and no, but again, they're my normal customers. So hence why I said if I'm working on a customer that I don't normally do, then I would take them off. But I wouldn't be telling my employees to do that. I typically take the new customers and introduce myself as the owner. So I will usually do things, and if they become a regular customer, that I'm doing their work. But I don't do warranty work for a manufacturer. Just for the warranty work. I only do warranty work for my existing customers. Okay, so I'm not going out to all sorts of different manufacturers and working on refrigerators. Rich, thank you so much for that super chat, man. I really appreciate it, bud. Cheers to you, man. When it comes to walk-in freezers, what amperage reading am I looking for on a defrost heater? So someone had asked me. It depends on every type of defrost heater. It really depends on the length, the wattage, and then you'll be able to figure out what the current should be and the voltage applied. Now, there's some backwards way, username, what the fuck, LOL. Hey, what? That's a nice name there, bud. You had a service call to recover refrigerant from a unit so they could dispose of it. Turns out it was R290. Easy money. PS, thanks for the cups. Oh, right on, bud. Oh, okay. That is, oh, your name is escaping me right now. I know your name. It's right on the tip of my tongue. I'll think of it in a minute. I sent him some cups. You're in California with me. I'll think of it in a minute, dude. Forgive me. Your name's escaping me, but it'll take a second and I'll remember it. Yeah, right on. So sometimes, occasionally, someone ordered some merch from me and I shoved some extra stuff in there. So in his case, I shoved in a couple spoiling cups into the packaging and sent them out to him because I have a whole bunch of these spoiling cups left. So occasionally I do that kind of stuff. So, all right. Thanks so much for that super chat, bud. That's awesome, man. That's really cool. Avery, you said, oh, right on. Thank you, Avery. That's very nice of you, man. I really appreciate it. Why don't condenser fins last as long as they used to? Because they're thinner. Every single metal that they're using on all of our equipment is a lot thinner, and it's just beat up. Something to understand, too, I'll address this here. I get it all the time. How come I don't use fin combs on my condensers? How come my condensers are so bad? And yes, I do know that they make fin combs. People send me those emails and those messages all the time. I use fin combs. A fin comb is something that you use to straighten out the fins on a condenser. But if you have never used a fin comb, right? And I think a lot of these people have never used them when they send these messages to me. Once you use a fin comb, it means that the fins have been bent. Once you straighten them out with a fin comb, those fins are more apt to bend again just by blowing on the condenser because they're weak. Once they bend, they're done. Okay, so you straighten them out, but then they just get bent again. So yes, I do use fin combs, but just understand, majority of the stuff out there, I've tried to straighten it before. Once you can see, you can tell when something's been straightened before, and majority of the time it's not going to come back out. So let's see what else we got going on in here. What am I missing? Yeah, I said a bad word. My bad. It's not safe for families here. NSF. Is that an OG Simpson meter? Yes, that is my dad's Simpson meter. It's a Simpson 260, I believe. I never use that meter. I can guarantee you it still works. Probably just needs some new D batteries in it. That is an OG Simpson meter. Yes, that was my dad's. So, and that is an original Annie right next to it, a hermetic compressor analyzer. One of the first ones, too. One of my employees gave that to me a couple years back. So I'm looking at the chat right now. All right. Okay, so I already answered that. Oh, as far as the defrost heaters, though, go, what amp readings am I looking for in an electric defrost heater? It depends on the information and how the customer or the manufacturer designed it. But if you want to know what the current should be on a heater, oftentimes you can backwards calculate it because a lot of the times manufacturers have information about the wattage of a particular heater. And if you use the Ohm's law calculator, you can calculate what a heater's current should be based on the voltage that is applied. Understand something, on a walk-in freezer evaporator, it has a current rating next to the defrost heaters. But if you look over to the left, it typically has a voltage too. It'll say it's always rated at the highest voltage. So 230 volts, and here's the current. If you're only running 202 volts, the current's going to be different. So understand that that current is going to be variable depending on the voltage applied to that heater, and you need to do some math to figure it out. Show the man bun. I don't have a man bun, man. My hair is just California haircut going on right here. There you go. So no man bun. All right. No man bun yet, I should say. I told my daughter I would grow one though. So, all right, I'm looking at the chat right now. Hello again. Am I on call on Thanksgiving Day? I don't think so. Oh, but yes, I am. My apprentice is on call, I believe, on Thanksgiving. No, he's not. Yeah, no, I'm not on call on Thanksgiving Day. All right, let's see what else we got in here. I don't know. Anyways, whatever. Let's see. I already answered that question. We're going to mark that one off the list. Ooh, let's talk about the vacuum pumps. That's a good one. So vacuum pumps can be frustrating, right? When we have all these fancy vacuum gauges, True Blue hoses, Appian, Mega Flow, insert name of whatever funky name they have for these vacuum hoses and core removal tools and VCRTs and all these different things, right? I really appreciate all this cool stuff. I love my True Blue hoses, the big giant Smurf boner hoses, like NorCal Dave says. Those are great hoses, but there's flaws in all the connections, right? And I have a lot of frustration and trouble with core removal tools. Doesn't matter what manufacturer, they all leak, okay? They do great for the first couple years, maybe a year, but then after that, they fall off the map real quick and start to become problematic. So I was having an issue in my recent video where I was trying to evacuate the system. Excuse me. That's a first. I don't know if I've ever yawned on a stream. Shows my exhaustion. But I was trying to evacuate the system, and I suspected, because I've been having some issues lately with my vacuum core removal tools, that they were leaking. And when I say that I've been having some issues, what I can do, I can pressurize a system with nitrogen. If you pressurize it with nitrogen with the vacuum core removal tool on there, and you actuate the vacuum, the ball valve, you'll oftentimes get a blast of nitrogen out the top of the ball valve handle, which tells me that it's leaking. So on the flip side, when it's in evacuation and I can't pull a proper vacuum, I always suspect the vacuum core removal tool. So I am going to have to order some new ones. I also was kind of thinking about this. I think I need to, with all the new refrigerants and all the new requirements about pulling proper evacuations and everything's so much more critical, we need to make sure that we're getting we're charging accordingly for our equipment. You know, I carry a very nice vacuum pump in my truck. We maintain it. We change the oil on a regular basis, but I have these vacuum hoses that help me to speed up my process. And I have to make sure that I charge accordingly, because they're actually speeding up the process of my repair. My repairs are typically time and materials. So therefore, I'm saving the customer money by using my fancy tools, and I'm, saving them money. Therefore, I'm not charging as much money. So I need to make sure that I'm charging accordingly for my tools that I use. We all need to make sure of that, right? When we use these fancy tools that make our jobs easier, that doesn't mean that the customer gets it for cheaper. I mean, that means that we still use our knowledge, but if we find a tool that makes our job go faster, we still have to be able to charge accordingly for that said tool that can help us. Now, I'm still probably going to give the customer a break and not charge them a whole bunch, but I'm going to do it in fees. I have a vacuum fee. And I probably need to increase it a little bit because I'm having to buy core removal tools more often, but they're very important because they allow me to speed up the process of my evacuations. So we got to make sure we charge accordingly for that stuff. Let's see. I wanted to talk about this too, leak detectors. So understanding how to use a leak detector. In my recent video, I had an R290 leak. I was able to find leaks in the system without even putting service ports on the system, okay? It was a big picture kind of a thing. They had a roach infestation in the box that they'd already taken care of, and hence there was no active things moving around inside there. But when I diagnosed the bad control, I also ran a leak detector and found a leak in the condensate heater and a leak in the evaporator coil. So how do I know that the leak in the condensate heater was not caused by the leak in the evaporator, or vice versa, or something else? Okay. And it's all in the way that you use your leak detector and verify things. So I picked up a leak when I first got into the box on the top of the system, on the top of the connections at the evaporator. But then I tried to find that leak again and I couldn't. I then picked up a leak down in the bottom of the evaporator, right? So then I took my leak detector right above where the leak was and I looked on the top of the evaporator. Is there anything leaking? Because the refrigerant's going to fall. Nothing was leaking on top. So it's all about how you use your leak detector, okay? And also understand that if you have a leak detector where wind is blowing into the end of it, that can sometimes set them off, or water drips into the tip, that can set them off. So you have to pay attention. It's not as easy as just shoving something in there and saying, oh, it's going off, that means there's a leak. Not necessarily. You could have just shoved it in water, or you could have shoved it in an air source. Whenever I'm doing leak searches on things, typically you're going to turn all the equipment off. You don't want fans moving around. You don't want it to be super windy outside. Of course, you can get a better leak detector that can help you find things when the fans are moving or the wind is blowing. But on average, it's about double checking yourself. So you find a leak, double check, go back out, zero out your leak detector, start it up again, go check it. You know, keep double checking to make sure. Put soap bubbles on it if you can. Always want to double check your diagnoses for sure. Okay. All right, let's get to the chat and see what I'm missing in here. Good gosh. Stupid spammers. Is one vacuum pump oil better than another brand over viscosity? Honestly, Avery, I just buy what I have availability to, and it works fine for me. I've never really invested too much time into figuring out which vacuum pump oil is better or worse. I use a field piece vacuum pump, and I use JB oil because my local supply house sells the JB oil. If they had the field piece oil, I'd probably buy it, but they have the JB oil, so that's what I use. So I personally don't know if there's any method or madness to choosing vacuum pump oil. I just choose what's available at my local supply house. Can you you can rebuild the core removal tool. John Cruz, yes, you can rebuild the Appion one. The Yellow Jacket one, I don't know that you can. So I have the special Appion core removal tool. That was the one that was leaking. And I don't know that you can rebuild it, but I believe I can send them into Appion to get rebuilt. Or not Appion. Yellow Jacket. Yeah, that's the one. The Appion ones, though, yeah, you can go to TrueTechTools.com and you can order all the rebuild parts. I've rebuilt their core removal tools before. It's not that big of a deal. It's just time consuming. But as far as the special Yellow Jacket ones, I don't know that you can rebuild those without sending them in. Let's see what else we got in here. Do they make zoom lock fittings for R290 systems so you don't need to braze the service ports on? Kyle, I don't know if the zoom lock max fittings are approved for R290 or not. I would have to do some research on that. On a flip note, hold on just a sec. Actually, just had Sporlin send me some really cool cutaways of some zoom lock max fittings. Now this is the push to connect fitting. I have yet to use a push to connect fitting, but I'll try to get some Instagram photos up and put them on Instagram. I'm really intrigued with all the O-rings that they have in one of these push to connect fittings. It's really interesting. Now again, I've never used one of these. I have a few in my truck, but there's all kinds of O-rings inside there. And these are full cutaways that they made for me. So these are really cool. And then they also sent me a cutaway of the normal Zoom Lock Max fitting. And it's really interesting the way that these things work with the O-rings inside there. And when you're looking at it, how well they press to seal the copper to copper connection and then have the O-ring for like a backup to keep it back. So these are the Zoom Lock Max. This is the standard Zoom Lock Max, and this is the push to connect fitting. I actually just got these in the mail today. So these are pretty cool because these are actually engineered cutaways. Really neat. All right, let's see what else we got in here. Yeah, exactly. My moderator, Justin, said that's how you know when you've made it in the YouTube world, when you get spam people during a live stream. Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw it, but there was just a spam bot that came in here and started spamming a bunch of stuff, and the moderators caught it and took it out real quick. So, all right, guys. Well, it is time to wrap this up. I really, really appreciate you. Thank you for everybody out there that interacts with the videos when they're on, you know, the normal YouTube videos. Please, if you don't already, make sure you interact. Thumbs up, thumbs down, leave a comment, let me know. Hey, I am 100% okay with feedback, negative or positive. If you have something constructive to say that can help me grow as a technician, please leave it in the YouTube comments, send me an email. I'm always looking to make myself a better service technician. I fully am aware of all the craziness or of all the things that I can do better, okay? But please make me more aware, all right? I want to leave you guys on something. I've been talking about it a lot in my videos. I've made a lot of social media posts about this lately. We need a lot more kindness, okay? There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. Everybody is so scared right now, so frustrated. There's anger, there's animosity. There's so much craziness going on out there right now. We need to be kind to one another. We need to share kindness. You need to You know, it's super easy, guys. Hold a door open for someone, buy a coffee for someone, do something nice, okay? I've been asking a lot of questions on social media about it, and just, you know, we just need some more kindness in this world. So please, if you can do anything, if I'm going to ask you of anything, please just be kind to one another. Be good humans, right? I'm going to wrap this up and cue up the outro music. I appreciate you all so very much. You're amazing. Thank you so much for coming into the stream. And I'm going to go ahead and cue up the outro music if I can actually do this correctly. And we will catch you on the next one, okay? You're still here. You're not supposed to be here. You guys need to find somewhere else to go. I got nothing else for you. Although, I do have a little bit of this left. Not really much more that I got to talk about. Besides some craziness. Got a new puppy in my house. I've talked about that lately. That guy is making me tired. It's like having a little baby, man. 2 to 3 times a night you got to get up to take him outside, and then like every once in a while when he actually sleeps through the night, you wake up and you're like, wait, did I take him out? And you can't remember, and you're like, he slept through the night? And I have to ask my wife, did you take him out? And she's like, no. Like, whoa, he slept for 6 hours. That's amazing. But I swear it's like having a toddler again. Just eating everything, biting everything, peeing on everything. Actually, he's doing pretty good. He is. What did my wife say? He's like 11 weeks old or something like that. So yeah, he's I think he's 11 weeks or something like that. Yeah, I don't know where he is right now. He's in the other room with my family. But yeah, he's a cool little dude. He's working out great, Troy. That's awesome, man. I mean, it's tiring, but it's gonna be awesome, dude. He's gonna be huge. He's gonna be 80 plus pounds for sure. as what he's going to be when he gets full grown. So he's a silver Labrador Retriever. He's purebred. It's a lot of fun. His name's Luke. Cool little dude. So cool little dude for sure. So all right, well, I'm gonna wrap this up. I really do appreciate you. Maybe on the next stream, it's gonna be a series of baby gates and walls that I have to get through to go get to him, because we have baby gates all over the house now, so he can't get around certain areas and stuff. And I baby gated him out of the hallway so he couldn't get to my office or anything. So, but all right, I'm out of here.